I'm glad we could meet at least in this way on this Good Friday. We certainly are missing our normal Good Friday service when we gather with wonderful music and very expressively share the wonder of what God has done for us through the death of Jesus Christ on the cross. But I hope on Good Friday sometime this afternoon or evening you can have some time to reflect on what Jesus did, to think about the cross, and to understand the wonderful love of our Savior that brings us life. My focus tonight will be to share the story from the perspective of the centurion's story. What he might have experienced and felt and understood as he was right up close to the crucifixion of Jesus. And so I'm going to read the text from Matthew chapter 27, beginning with verse 27 through verse 54. And then I'm going to tell the story from the perspective of the centurion's story. The text from Matthew chapter 27. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head they placed the written charge against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests and teachers of the law and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. From noon until 3 p.m, darkness came over all the land. About 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." I had seen it all before, and I certainly would see it again. Death. I guess one doesn't ever really get used to it. One thing you learn after you've been in battle is that life can be snuffed out so quickly. And after a few times, you simply don't think about it anymore. That was me. I had seen much cruelty. I had inflicted much cruelty. By now, I was beyond compassion. You see, you learn not to think that the person you're dealing with has feelings, and you can do that because you no longer feel. And the horror of it doesn't affect you anymore. That was true for me and my fellow soldiers. I was the commander of the execution detail. Inflicting cruelty had become a game for us, a sort of sick way of lightening the burden of life. It had sort of become entertainment. There was a rush, the rush of power against the helpless. That was especially true with Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. We mocked him. Someone wove together that crown of thorns and put it on his head. We spit in his face. We took turns hitting him. But sometime during that ordeal, I realized that this crucifixion was different. This man was different. Oh, outwardly, he suffered like the rest of them. The pain, the torture, the agony. In fact, he was so weak he couldn't even carry the cross up the hill toward Golgotha. But inwardly, there was a man at rest. I looked into his eyes as I put wine up to his lips. He tasted and then refused to drink, as if to say, I am in control here. The wine won't control me. And almost to say, and you won't control me either, centurion. It was disconcerting to me. There was a quiet consciousness of power that he had. Not fighting, not struggling, but not weakness, not helplessness. There was the calm assurance of control, and I felt a shiver go down my spine. I fought it. I had the power, didn't I? And yet he was fearless, as if he was simply fulfilling his purpose. We were good at our work. Just a few hammer strokes and his wrists were pinned to the crossbar. We knew how to position the nail exactly right so it would go through his heel bone and into the upright. And then the cross was thudded into the ground and our hard work was done. And we sat around to have some fun, to begin to mock him. But I wondered if anyone else was sensing what I was sensing at that moment. I stuffed it back and I joined in with the others. Hail, King of the Jews, I said. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. Someone else said, he saved others, but he can't save himself, King of Israel. Let him call on his God. He says he's the Son of God. But he was different. Often men on the cross would talk, short curses, cries of agony, bitterness, anger. But while we were mocking him, he was ministering. Words of kindness to the criminal next to him, words of concern about his mother. And then, as if looking right at me, he said, Father, forgive them, or did I hear him? For he does not know what he's doing. I had never heard that before from a cross. The ability to forgive. The audacity to forgive. It was not the grace of a man. It could only be God. And I realized that this man could destroy me. I looked away, not wanting to make eye contact, like many of my victims had looked away, not wanting to make eye contact with me. And as I looked away, I noticed how dark it was in the middle of the day, as though a veil had been pulled across the sky, as though the heavens could no longer bear to look at the agonies and indignities done to an innocent man. There was a sense of evil. I could feel it. As if God were departing, I felt a pang of guilty. I was evil. and the earth began to shake. The rocks rolled down the hillside. The tombs in the garden nearby broke open, as if the whole earth was convulsing with the same horror that I felt. And then there was the terrible haunting cry from the cross, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? And then one last final breath, and he said, into your hands I commit my spirit. And I don't know if I actually heard it, the ripping sound. Maybe I only imagined it later when I heard what had happened. But I remember being distracted by the shouts from the temple courts across the valley as the people came running as if for their lives. The Holy of Holies, the habitation of the Jewish God, was bursting forth. I fell to the ground. I curled up in a ball. I thought I was going to die. And then it was all over. It was quiet. I looked up again. I was alive. I looked at Jesus of Nazareth, hanging on the cross, motionless, his eyes set. I knew he was dead. He was dead, but I was alive. I don't know how it happened or how I understood, but I stood before the cross where lifeless Jesus still hung, and I knew, and I confessed out loud, surely he was the Son of God. My hard heart, my crusty exterior had been penetrated, and I heard the voice of God in my spirit. I understood that this was no ordinary crucifixion. This was no ordinary man. I had to learn about him. I had to learn the meaning of all of this. And I learned that day God loosed his holy wrath upon this innocent man, his eternal Son, the man who had been God. Now God become man, and he died to take the punishment for my sin, to open up a way to God for me through his mercy and his grace. And I will never forget his words, Father, forgive them. And at that cross, I saw the light of my Savior's love, and I believed, and my sin was taken away, and my life was changed. Surely this man is the Son of God.
The Lord, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are still, when strivings cease. Comforter, my heart in awe, here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in endless pain, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to stay. To on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, since curse has lost his grip on me, for I am his, and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. No guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry